So I was 16 though, the first time I really sat down with a bunch of friends and just got wasted.
Yeah. Were you blackout? I mean, of course you didn't black out every time that you drank in the morning before you went to school, but
Yeah.
on the weekends, you're just...
Oh, absolutely. Just total binge drinker.
Yeah.
And
Recovery Vow is sponsored by Coleman Construction, Augusta Magazine, and Corbin Jones State Farm, among many other sponsors. Thank you for your support. Rob Fultz, welcome to the Recovery Vow podcast.
Thanks, buddy. It's good to be here.
Man, we're going to dive right into this thing.
I like it.
So Rob Fultz, the reason I asked you to come on the podcast was because of Jordan. Jordan
Arcates.
heard your story at camp, and he said, "Man, you need to talk to.
That's cool.
Talk to Rob." So
Old Jordan. I like Jordan. He's a good.
old Jordan, he is a good soul,
He's a
isn't
good dude.
So you've been in ministry almost your whole life. I feel like you're one of the ones that were born in the faith.
No, absolutely not. I was born on a farm and didn't even go to church until I was in boot camp in the Marine Corps, and that was only because it was a safe place from drill instructors.
Okay. Well, I was wrong. But I do remember reading that you've got, 30 years in recovery. So
Yeah.
before you got to basic training, what was life like with Rob?
It was, I would say it was classically dysfunctional. I mean, my parents got divorced. I grew up in a really small town, 1 4-way stop sign
Same.
on a farm. You know what I'm saying? So most
Tennessee?
No, in Virginia, actually.
Virginia,
yeah.
okay.
And so, I would say it's classically dysfunctional. And my childhood was fantastic. Like, I mean, so in one weird way, like it couldn't have gotten any better.
Yeah.
In another weird way, it couldn't have gotten any worse, right? So going to my teenage years, I get bored, just like teenagers do, and mud bogging and fishing just wasn't enough. And so, you start drinking.
I love you said
start,
that. Mud bogging and fishing.
Mud bogging and fishing wasn't enough. So you start drinking and you start doing those things. And literally by the time I was a senior in high school, I was pretty much an alcoholic.
Really?
I would show up to class drunk. My senior
Really?
year
You were
of high
drinking in
school.
the morning in high school?
Oh yeah. Oh, in the morning, I'd go out to my truck at lunch. Even my parents didn't know this, right? I mean, so by the time I graduated high school, which I barely made, I went to the Marine Corps and I was just looking for some structure in my life. And so they provided that in wonderful ways. And it did help because I didn't have access,
Yeah.
right?
Got you away from the crossroads.
It got exactly. But of course, as soon as you get out of boot camp, who parties harder than a good Marine, right? I mean, so it was right back into the world, right back into doing the things after I got my first duty station and all that kind of stuff. And then something super unexpected happened, and I got medically discharged from the Marine Corps. And that was a huge blow for me because the only thing I could do was return back to the small town that I grew up in. Right. And so for me, that was a huge blow. Like
something about going back.
It was just the going back, especially being discharged. It was like, loser, you didn't make it again. You know what I'm saying? So, and so when I went back, it was just no holds barred. Anything and everything went, moved from drinking to marijuana to cocaine, stuff like that. And
bro, you were in it.
I was in it.
Okay.
I was in it. So, so I but that was a binge. It was like a 6-month binge.
Did you do this because you were just upset from being
I was upset.
separation?
I was depressed. I had no future. I couldn't go to college. I had a 1.7 GPA in high school. Like,
it's like I'm talking to myself
right?
now.
Exactly.
I mean,
so
I was identical, exact same.
And so I didn't know. I had nowhere to turn.
Yeah.
I at least at that point, I didn't know anything about, hopefulness or whatever. So, so I went on about a 6-month binge and just absolutely tried to, well, I don't care. If it kills me, it kills me. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If I wreck my car and die, who really cares? And so, it just took a steep dive and, got to the place where suicide was probably the best option for me.
You had the thoughts.
Not only had the thoughts, I had the gun. But a real pivotal moment for me was when one night I was sitting on the edge of my bed in this little cabin in the woods that I was living in with a friend. sitting on the edge of my bed. I had a .38 revolver, and for 2 hours, I would stick it in my mouth, and I would put it to my head, and I put it down for just back and forth. And then I got mad at myself because you don't even have enough guts to squeeze a trigger. Like, it was just.
Do you feel like this
painful.
was just all from depression, or?
I think it was a combination of all the things. It was the combination of no genuine self-understanding. It was depression. It was anxiety. It was all the failures. It was the broken home. It was, all of that stuff combined. And certainly because I had no concept of Christ.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I knew about Jesus culturally. We went to church at like Easter and Christmas, probably like most people, but I had no real concept of who Jesus was and what that meant for me. So I had no framework for it. I think that's where the issue was.
I would agree. And I would agree because I've been there.
Right.
Now, if we went back to high school, because we just covered a lot in 3 minutes.
We did.
But if we went back to high school, what do you think, outside of it just being a small town, mud bogging and fishing got old? Because where I grew up was the same way.
Right.
There wasn't a whole lot to do,
Yeah.
What do you feel like made you make the choice to try those things, and how old were you when you first tried those things, if you remember?
Yeah. I know I was 16 when the first time I drank. I was 16. Actually, I take that back. I did drink a beer in the 8th grade with a guy. We stole one out of his dad's fridge, and it was terrible.
It tasted terrible.
It tasted terrible.
It's the fizzy burn.
I was like, this stuff is awful.
Yeah.
Like, who wants this?
Yeah, but after 8 of them, you don't taste anything.
Exactly. So I was 16 though. The first time I really sat down with a bunch of friends and just got wasted.
Yeah. Were you blackout? I mean, of course you didn't black out every time that you drank in the morning before you went to school, but on the weekends, you're just...
Oh, absolutely. Just total binge drinker.
Yeah.
And it was it was legitimately a problem. Like, I couldn't just drink social.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went all the way in all the time.
You drank to get drunk.
I drank to get drunk.
Yeah.
And what was crazy is I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't, I didn't feel bad. In fact, I thought it was funny. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're in high school. People think
I think it took away for me. It took away, not that I don't think I was depressed in high school, but I felt like I had to do something to fit in. I wanted to hurry up and age.
Yeah.
I wanted to hurry up and get through those years. I wanted to get out of that situation. I don't know what it was I didn't like about it, but I did not like where I was at. I like my friends, but I'm not friends with them now, acquaintances. Yeah.
Right.
I think I performed a wedding for some of the people I graduated. They're kids, Some of the people I graduated with are grandparents.
Oh, my goodness.
And so, when I was going through all that, it was just like, hurry up and get this over with.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to not remember any of it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But as soon as I got turned on to drinking, I drank to get drunk.
Right.
I got turned on to weed.
Yeah.
9th grade, 10th grade. And I remember coming to school high, and I had everybody laughing. So I'm like, this is me. I've arrived. This is who I'm supposed to be.
Exactly.
And then, the cocaine came and the pills and all that as I got older. But I was doing it to be somebody I wasn't. And I feel like that was kind of like you. You didn't know who you were called to be yet.
Oh, I had no clue. Okay, I'm going to say this, but in this person's defense, they were basing their comment off of what they had seen of me at that point. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But my high school guidance counselor sat down with me one day, and she's like, "So what are you going to do when you graduate?" I'm like, "I don't know. Everybody else is going to college." And she's like, "Oh no, don't go to college. That's not for you." Right. So, I mean, and I know what she meant. Like, I get what she was saying, I think.
Yeah.
But, again, she was basing her assessment off of what she had seen in me at that point, which was that guy. And so.
And that makes me kind of mad, though.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Because it immediately took away any kind of other possibility. So in my small town, we were a big poultry community. Like,
same.
Right, so I could go down there and work at the poultry plant, all day long, picking chicken guts and picking feather. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I remember applying to that place.
That's
I
the life.
applied to Amick Farms. I'm like,
bro, I worked there.
I remember applying there. I was like, I had this girlfriend, and she's like, well, you might as well get a job at the plant.
At the plant,
and we'll
right?
just get
Yeah.
us a trailer over here by mom and dad's. I remember applying there.
I did work at the plant for a summer, and I also worked for VDOT scraping up roadkill. That was my qualification level right there. But yeah, I think for me it was just no way out.
Yeah.
Like there was just no escape from myself and from the world that I live in. And again, it wasn't like it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great community. It's a great people. I have good parents. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and so I don't know, kind of like what you were saying, I don't know what the drive or the sense of urgency was for me to escape it. Like I had to be bigger than that.
Yeah.
Maybe it was God's design. Maybe that was something, just God innately put inside of me to drive to do those things.
It's
But-
your story. Hey, before we get back to this episode, I want to take a second and thank Ashley and the team over at Augusta Magazine for your sponsorship of the Recovery Valve podcast. We could not do what we do without sponsors like you. If we flash forward to you sitting on the bed in that cabin, I feel like, because I've done the same thing, not with a pistol, but I tried it with medicines and sleeping pills. But I felt like, and maybe you can relate to this, like I had moments of clarity in that situation where God was present, even though I didn't have a relationship with him.
Yes.
So do you feel like you had like this spiritual moment of clarity?
I do because the salvation comes right after.
Okay.
So in that 2 hour window, every time I thought I was getting ready to pull the trigger, it was just, there was something constraining me, like physically constraining me from actually doing it. Mm-hmm. And looking back now, it's obviously easier for me to see that, I believe the Holy Spirit was present even in that moment, saying, not now, not this way. God's got his hand on you. He's got a plan for your life. You have no clue yet. Your whole world's getting ready to be wrecked next week, with an encounter with Jesus. I need you. It was just a constraining presence that was there, no matter how desperate I was.
Yeah.
Same. No matter how loud I yelled, and I yelled, and no matter how much I screamed, no matter how much, at one point I actually emptied it, right? Emptied out all the shells, and then just dry fired it in my head and in my mouth like 50 times. I'm like, okay, that's what you got to do. That's what it feels like. Boom, 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 right? Put the shells back in it, go to do it.
Just can't do it.
Just can't do it.
I'm thankful you didn't.
Me too.
So I heard what you just said. The next week something happened. What happened the next week?
Yeah, so that week after that moment went as normal, drinking, parties, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. And so that weekend came, and it was one of those weekends where even the drinking and even the drugs wasn't going to solve it. I was just at my wit's end, right? And
Are you leading up to what that would be rock bottom?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I think rock bottom for me was realizing that, number one, I wasn't going to kill myself just because I was too chicken or whatever. So that was out because, I'm lame, right? That was my thought. And I didn't have, any future. And so I just got to this place where I was just like, the only thing I know to do is leave. Just leave. And so I called my mom and I said, if I don't get out of this town, I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. I'm going to die. Right now, just a few months before that, my mom had become a Christian at a Winterfest in her 40s.
Okay.
And so she had just become a Christian. And so I called her. It's like, I'm going to die. I need to get out of this town. She's like, okay, just relax. Meet me after church, and we'll go to grandma's for a week or something. My grandma lived in West Virginia, way back in the mountains. And I said, I can't even wait that long. I got to go now.
Yeah, no. Where were you going?
Where was it going? I went and met her at church and went to church. So,
But she wasn't, like you said, she had just became a Christian. She wasn't like throwing
no,
church at you or nothing.
No. She wasn't trying to evangelize me or anything like that. In fact, she said, I'll meet you after church.
Good.
You know what I'm saying? Like she was. And so go to church that day. I'll share this really quick and we'll move on. But I go to church that day, no clue what the preacher said, still half hungover. He calls us up at the end of service. It's a really small country Pentecostal church, right? He calls a bunch of people up at the end of service because that's what you do. You pray for people. Hey, Joe over here, he's got, surgery this week. And Martha, her daughter, Suzanne, is stuck over there. I don't know. You know how it is,
I get
right?
it.
Small. So he called us up because he knew my mom had told him that we were going to go to West Virginia. So he called us up to pray for us for travel. Well, I'm watching down this line, this pastor who was laying hands on people, people crying, people speaking in tongues, people falling out in the spirit. And I'm like, oh no, this ain't me. So I like bowed up. Like I was going to punch him. Like, I was going to hit the guy. And so he comes down the line, prays for my mom, and then he gets to me. And literally the only thing he did was look at me and he just put his hand on my chest. And bro, I exploded inside. It was it was crushing me, just the conviction of the Holy Spirit. And I actually thought I was physically dying. I turned to the guy behind me and I said, I need help. I need help. And he's like, brother, we're praying for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, what else is he supposed to say?
I just saw him in a suit and everything.
Oh, absolutely, dude. He said, we're praying for him. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm dying. And so in that moment, I just heard the Lord. I heard the voice of the Lord just say to me in that moment, if you don't accept me now, you never will.
Wow.
And I just crumpled in the floor of that altar. And the only thing I could get out of my mouth that didn't have F-bombs in it was, Lord, I'm such a dirtbag. And that's what he accepted. And that was it. That was October 16th, 1994.
1994.
That was the change.
How old were you?
20.
That's amazing, Rob.
Yeah, 20.
You've gone on to get a doctorate, a master's degree, bachelor's of science. What did these years look like leading up to it? I mean, how did you know from that point forward that this was your calling, and then you met your wife?
Right.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I think once I actually gave my heart to Christ, and again, I was a radical conversion experience.
Yeah.
It wasn't gradual. For me, it was immediate. For me, part of that recovery was the Lord granted me the grace and the mercy that he took those things from me immediately.
So you were sober from...
I was sober from October 16th, 1994 to this day.
That's amazing.
And
you got it from being
I got it in the altar. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't been tempted. That doesn't mean that there are certain moments, especially high stress moments, where I'm like, bro, bottle of Jack would be great right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's not that those things have gone. It's just that, that temptation side is gone. It's just, I know what I've been delivered from. I know what God has done in my life. I know the grace and the mercy that he's afforded me. So from that point forward, my main goal was to put myself in every possible position I could to learn and to grow in Christ. So we moved towns, started going to a church. That's how I met my wife, Dana.
Okay.
Her dad was a pastor in Charlottesville, Virginia, for 40 years, and that's where I met her. And so I'm growing in the Lord, serving in the church, and we get married in 1996. We have our first child in 1998.
Did you tell Dana when you first met her that you were, you had this experience with suicide and that you were in recovery?
We talked about it some. There are some things, there's transparency and there's authenticity, and then there's things that, in my opinion, that she doesn't need to know. And that's not because I'm hiding something from her. It's just, it does nothing to benefit or build our marriage together.
Right. I get that.
I told her, the things that I felt like in that moment she needed to know. Even when we went through premarital counseling, the premarital counselor, who knew my story very well because I had done counseling with him, he said, this is what this is. This will be the only time in your marriage you'll ever bring it up again. It'll never happen again. And it hasn't.
Now, when you and Dana met at her dad's church, how long were you involved with her, with this new life?
Yeah.
Before you got the calling to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, so that was the summer of 1998. We're married. We have a kid. We're living life. She's doing her 9 to 5. I'm doing my 9 to 5. We're happy. We're serving in church. And we were serving with the youth. And one night we had this big youth event at our church. And I was just sitting in the back, not because I didn't want to participate. I was just working and helping and serving, right? So I'm sitting in the back with her, and I see the kids go up to the altar, and it was like a light bulb, like in my brain and in my heart, just something illuminated. And it was like the Holy Spirit said, this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. It was my calling to ministry.
Clear.
Just clear. And so from that point, I kind of went home, and Dana and I talked about it. I just kind of told her what the experience was like, and because she said she would never marry a preacher, so don't ever tell God what you won't do. We laugh about that even after almost 30 years of marriage, but so we talked about it, and literally within 2 months, I was enrolled at Lee University studying for the ministry.
What you do now with Church of God, tell me about, am I saying this correctly? Is it C2?
Yeah, C2 Next Gen. Mm-hmm.
C2 Next Gen.
Yeah.
Tell me about C2 and what got you to where you are now, because I want to highlight that.
Yeah. So for me, my passion has always been next gen stuff, right? Obviously, probably the same way that you feel, if you can help a young adult or a high school kid not walk through the same crap that we did for whatever reason, that's a win, right?
Sure.
So my bend has always been towards next gen stuff. Even when I was a senior pastor, I was bent towards next gen stuff. So that's always been my real passion and my real heart, and that's kind of followed me through my ministry. It's what my doctorate is in. It's redemptive development of Gen Z. It's, these are the things that for me just continually keep creeping up, equipping, empowering, educating, inspiring the next generation to serve God with their whole heart. Like, my life mission statement is the pastors, lead leaders, and build up those who build the kingdom, right? So my life mission statement is focused around the development of that next gen and helping them to grow in healthy ways, not just in ministry, but in life.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I was campus pastor at Lee University, I actually got to do that firsthand in a lot of very cool ways. And there's so many stories there that we don't have time to tell on the show today, but just so many phenomenal opportunities to minister to young adults and to help them carve a better pathway forward for themselves in life and in ministry.
Rob, I've got a couple questions I want to ask you before we close. And I always try to come up with these different questions. I've done this rapid fire thing, but I've got 3 questions.
Okay.
You think about it before you answer. They're not meant to be deep, because we're talking about recovery on this podcast and marriage and ministry and families and all the things.
Yeah.
So this isn't meant to be deep. You make it as fun as you want to make it.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
I am ready.
If you were in a room with everyone you have ever met, who would you look for?
Ooh, that's a great question. My wife first. I mean, I'm not sure that that's the obvious, but
That's a great answer.
yeah.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Dana.
I'd look for Dana first. And then I might look for I don't know, Sylvester Stallone. I mean, I'm a big Rocky fan.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I've never actually met him, so that doesn't count. I missed the...
Well, Sylvester doesn't need to come before Dana.
That's it.
So you, smart man.
I don't know.
So if you had the chance to relive one day in your life,
Oh, gosh.
which day would it be?
Okay, can we make disclaimers? Because Dana's
Do whatever
going
you
to be
wanna do.
first in everything.
That's fine.
Right? My marriage would be the thing that I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're just talking about
Your wedding day.
my wedding day, but if we're just talking about like pure fun,
Yeah, you can say. Let's go ahead and say Dana, wedding, Dana for all 3 questions.
Dana wedding, Dana,
Yep.
Dana kids, Dana, all that stuff.
All the things. But if it was just for fun,
Just for fun.
if you had the chance to relive one day in your life, which day would it be?
Oh, man. Dude, I was not prepared for this.
That's the point.
I know. I would... ooh, come on, bro.
You're good.
Okay, so I'm gonna deviate because you tried to peg me on this on the questionnaire. You're like, "What's your favorite song?" I'm like, "Dude, I can't pick bands, I can't pick songs, and I can't pick colors
That's fine.
because I have favorites in all of them."
That's perfect.
Heavy metal, Metallica. Favorite Christian rap song? Go Hard by Lecrae. I mean,
That's why I want people to just be honest. But I mean, it doesn't have to. Just have fun with it.
Okay.
But if you could relive one day, we'll say your wedding day.
Okay, we'll say my wedding day. That was a good day, by the way.
It was a great day.
That was
Probably
a great day.
This one's tricky.
Okay.
Who would you say you are? The voice in your head, or the one who hears it? This can be now, or it can be 1995.
As of today, I'm slowly transitioning from the voice in my head. Because what I say to myself, my own self-talk, is probably not that great. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
And so I know this is probably deeper than what you want, but...
You can make it as deep as you want or as fun as you want.
Imposter syndrome is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And especially for guys like us who've come from gnarly backgrounds, I'm always thinking in the back of my head, I don't deserve to be here, or I don't fit in here.
I had that constant conversation.
You know what I'm saying?
Why are you doing this with me, God?
Exactly.
Like, what did I do?
Exactly.
Let me just live my life. But that's not what he wants for us.
That's not what he wants. So I would definitely say in this season of life right now, I'm really learning to transition from that voice in my head to the other person that I know I am. Because it's, and you say, is it taking you this long since 1994 to figure it out? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It
And that's
has.
okay.
It
Because
really
if
has.
you'd had these decisions in 1995 or 96,
Yeah, it
probably wouldn't be as successful as you are.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But I think I'm leaning into a season right now where my confidence is not in what I produce. It's not in my accolades. It's not in my positions or titles. It's not in whatever. My confidence is really found in how much I listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit and how open I am to receive what he's willing to say to me.
Great answer.
Because he tells me different things than what I tell myself.
Mm-hmm. And he reaffirms the things.
He reaffirms things. And so just a case in point, and this is not a plug because I'm not even going to share what it's called. But like in the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks tops, I sat down with a mentor friend of mine. He said, stop procrastinating. You need to have a book done by January 1st. No questions asked.
You going to do it?
Well, I'm already 25,000 words into it. So our goal was 30 to 32,000. That's a good 130 page book, right?
Yeah.
So I've started writing it down. Now, the cool thing is, because of the imposter syndrome being so heavy,
Mm-hmm.
I had to really think through, okay, what am I going to write about that other people can't call me an imposter for? My own story. So I share 9 personal stories of growing up that have taught me leadership lessons in reflection. And so that's what the book is about. But I'm not even going to tell you the title because I don't even know if that's.
Well, I want to make sure I get a copy.
Well, when it's done, you'll get a copy.
Yeah.
Rob, so there you go.
I want to say I didn't know you were in New York yesterday, but it makes me even more thankful that you took the time to come to do this podcast today.
I'm grateful.
I appreciate you sharing your testimony and your story. And I can see how God's changed your life and how you're using your story to change others. So thank you so much for coming by the Recovery Valve podcast.
My pleasure, man. I loved it.
Have a great trip home.
Thanks, buddy.
Hey, thanks for tuning in today's episode of Recovery Valve Podcast. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you would like to connect with us, you can connect with us through email at recoveryvalve@gmail.com, our website, recoveryvalve.com, or you can find us on our different social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. But we would love for you to go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. If you would like to pre-order a copy of my book, Marriage After Addiction, Take Back Your Life Together, you can do that through the store at exomarriage.com, or you'll see a link on any of our social media platforms. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Recovery Valve Podcast is brought to you by Goldneck, Newsom Electric, S&S Supplies, Carpet Cleaning Pros of Augusta, Rhett Walker, Atlas Health and Wellness, Norval Fixture and Equipment, Augusta Lawn and Turf, Augusta Dream Center, Bagwell Insurance, Sally Kohler Photography, Burroughs Elijah, Attorney at Law, Communigraphics, Kendra Neal Studio, Kendrick Paint and Body, Coleman Construction, Augusta Magazine, Corbin Jones State Farm, Game Changers, Tree Guys with Ties, Penn Roofing, Aggressors Adventure, Posey Funeral Directors, Craig International. And I want to say thanks to everyone else who's contributed to the Recovery Valve podcast. We couldn't do this without you.